Speaking of stats, the one way to put up stats is obviously primarily, you know, when you think about it from a fandom perspective, is offense, right? In the NFL, obviously the offseason is done, or partially done, right? The draft is done, free agency is done. And now we have a big, bright paper in front of us with teams that gotten better or gotten worse. But the question that we have today, right now at the bottom ticker, heading into the 2023 season, which team has the NFL's most explosive offense on paper? And Zay, if you want to do the honors.
Man, oh man, there is so many teams with stacked rosters this year, and there's gonna be some surprising ones we may hear today, we may not hear today. But I have to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. As interesting as that sounds, they have a lot of talent, especially with Calvin Ridley off of a suspension and going to be playing in full throttle. I believe he's on the Jaguars this year, right? Confirmed. Like he's going to
Yep.
be on the roster, on the team, on the field with them, with Travis Etienne, with Christian Kirk coming back. It is a lot of talent out there, and I don't know what to expect. They overexceeded expectations last year. No one anticipated them having that second half of the season that they had. Arguably one of the most explosive teams in that second half of the season. They beat the Chargers in a fashion that they did, coming back and winning that game at home was ridiculous. And I think the Jaguars have a real say and of an explosiveness on paper, of course. Because with Ridley coming back, he's an explosive receiver. With Christian Kirk coming back, Zay Jones, those guys, they did a fantastic job for Trevor Lawrence last year. Travis Etienne had an amazing year. And I think that offense is just going to be lights out electric. Before I don't know if can I give a second team real quick, briefly, or can I so my second team briefly, another team that I think is going to surprise a lot of teams this year is the Atlanta Falcons. They have a lot of speed on that offense. We're talking about Cordell Patterson. We're talking about Bijan Robinson. We're talking about Kyle Pitts. We're talking about Drake London. That is a lot of talent on the same football field that you have to look and try to contain simultaneously. And that's ridiculous. That's too much talent for one team to really have, and a defense has to really plan for that. And I think those two teams, for me, are like one of the more explosive teams on paper. When I'm just looking at everything from top to bottom, receivers to running backs to quarterbacks, it's gonna be interesting for those two teams to see what they do during the season.
Zach?
Yeah, Zay, it's funny. Looking at the schedule, those two teams are actually playing each other in London in Week 5. So I guess London got a pretty good draw there. Again, those two pretty explosive offenses. I like the Falcons pick, though. That's one I didn't really think of, but I like that. I see where you're coming from. So the key term in this question here is most explosive offense on paper. Like, that's the big key here, on paper. And I feel like the team I'm picking here is very appropriate with that term, like on paper, because on paper, this team looks really good and very explosive on offense. The question is, the game isn't played on paper, and we know this team's quarterback has had a lot of trouble staying on the field in recent memories, and that has to be the Miami Dolphins. When you look on paper, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a very smart and well-minded coach in Mike McDaniel. He knows what to do on the offensive side of the ball, and when Miami's offense is humming, yeah, there's no doubt they're very explosive. I think it's obviously a huge season for Tua Tagovailoa, considering when he's been on the field for the last few years, Miami offensively has been very good, especially last year with McDaniel, Tyreek Hill. We all know the impact he's made. I also think Miami's offensive line should be much better. They have a few running backs, Raheem Mostert, Ahmed, that come to mind that really know how to run the ball. And when it comes to explosive plays, there weren't many teams in the league that were more explosive than the Miami Dolphins. But the key term, of course, is on paper, and this offense looks very explosive on paper. The question is, how many games is their quarterback going to be in there? Because, of course, the games are not played on paper.
Yeah, and I think the two key words for me is actually two key words, is explosive, right? That doesn't necessarily mean better, but like put up points and like in bunches and just explosion, speed. I'm looking for that word speed and explosion, right? Also, I'm looking at paper as well. And I think this team that I'm about to present on this show, injuries could literally make my pick look bad, because we can always count on this duo to be injured. It's just a matter of how long are they going to be hurt for and how much weeks they're going to miss. And I'm going with the Chargers here. I think they have the most explosive offense on paper. And I think for me, when you talk about the addition, the drafty of Quentin Johnson, I like that pick. At first, I was like, maybe you want to go say Flowers there, right? But then I like the pick, size, athleticism, and it's more so about who he's playing alongside, too, right? Yards after the catch. Keenan Allen, obviously, injuries, like I said before, right? So help me God, injuries. But when healthy, best route one in the league, in my opinion, right? When healthy, Mike Williams can win those contested jump balls, right? Jump one-on-one balls, right? Deep threat down the field. He complements Keenan Allen very well. Now you have a third guy that can take the top off the defense in Quentin Johnson. I would love to see how much snaps they give the rookie this year and how, if he's going to, move up in the depth chart over Palmer, because Palmer's another guy that you have to respect. Austin Eckler is a check down king. Okay, yards after the catch, return of the yak. Okay, that's your guy, Austin Eckler, right? The only thing that would literally make me feel even more confident about my pick and be the cherry on the top is if the Chargers get another change of pace back. Like some, downhill, ground and pound goal line back like a Dalvin Cook or something like that. If they get Dalvin Cook or somebody like Ezekiel Elliott, now I'm really feeling good about my pick because now you don't only got an elusive, primarily catching back, but you have a downhill back. And I think that would make that offense even more explosive. But also quarterback. Tua doesn't have an explosive arm. I don't think he's as mobile as he was in the past. So I am looking at quarterback along with the weapons. I think Justin Herbert has an explosive arm. I really felt like he was held back by Joe Lombardi last year with this conservative thinking dunk offense. Kellen Moore's going to open that joint up, bruh. Kellen Moore's going to open that joint up, bruh. You heard what Mike McCarthy said now. Right? He wants to light up the scoreboard. I just want to win games. All right, you're going to light up the scoreboard with Justin Herbert as your guy because you was doing it with Dak. And now you got guys that could beat a yak, right? Come on now. Kellen Moore. I love Kellen Moore. I felt that he was the best pickup of any offensive coordinator. Why? Because he gives you that buffet offense. What I mean by buffet, you're going to mix in a lot of passes. You're going to mix in some runs. And you really never know what his offense is. And that's what I like about it in a crazy, psychotic way. Because the defense don't know if Justin Herbert going to throw the ball 40 times or if they're going to run the ball, 15 to 20 times. You don't know it. Like the Cowboys, you never knew. Dak was throwing it. They were running it. You never knew what they were. And you could be adaptive in that way. Let the game dictate how you're going to play. I love that pickup for Herbert. I love the weapon that they got for Herbert and Quentin Johnson. I love the receivers I don't love the receivers that they already have there because I really do feel like they needed to upgrade. But Johnson brings them out. They still got game. I'm going Chargers.
Real quick, I want to ask a quick question. And then hopefully down the line, we'll talk about teams that could surprise us. But I want to ask Lil, because he was a Buccaneers fan, but when Brady was there, do you feel like this offense could do something with Baker Mayfield, with Godwin and Evans and Fournette in that backfield? Do you think there's a possibility the Buccaneers could do something? Because that team has some talent on offense. It's just, I understand the quarterback situation. I understand their offensive line, if I'm not mistaken, is still pretty much there. But do you feel like it could be something there, or is it just completely nothing? Like it's all gone?
In the words of Ron Rivera, quarterback. Okay, they need a quarterback. Baker Mayfield is not that guy. Baker Mayfield is not terrible, right? I think I came a little harder in him, but he's not great. I don't even think it's his team. I don't think he's going to last being a starting quarterback. So you're talking about Kyle Trask, and I don't know what to, ask of Kyle Trask over there. I think Mike Evans and one of those receivers are going to go and get traded. I don't know if it's going to be, during the deadline. I don't know if it's going to be next year, but I don't really feel like they're going to have any explosive success with the quarterback that they have on the roster. I do have a second team, though. And Zach, feel free to give a second team. I'm like, Zay, I got a second team. And once again, this is on paper. I'm going the Ravens, right? Because first off, Lamar Jackson is the most explosive quarterback in the NFL, period. I'm talking about explosion. He can take over the game with his legs. And I think they're going through a X's and O's overhaul with the hire of Todd Monken, a guy who loves to pass the football. I think that's going to add another element where the Ravens are going to win some games passing the ball and not showing you only rushing looks. But also you cannot, ignore Lamar Jackson's athleticism. You're going to use him as a runner. And you got Odell Beckham Jr., who's still a speedy wide receiver, who's still explosive in his own right. You got Zay Flowers, who was probably the most explosive wide receiver in the draft. You compare those two guys together with Shaw Bateman is still explosive, right? I really think on paper they are explosive. J.K. Dobbins, like, come on, explosion. Gus Edwards, Gus Bus, explosion. So if I had to go a close number 2, it's the Ravens by far.
I like the Ravens pick, absolutely. With Lamar Jackson and the weapons he has, the upgraded offensive coordinator, I think that's a really good one. For the second team I would mention, I feel like I have to mention, is the Chiefs. Like, they literally lost Tyreek Hill, and they still led the league in points per game last year, which I still don't know how that's the case. Kelsey's still there. I'm curious to see also, like, they have a lot of options in terms of who their number 1 wide receiver could be. Kadarius Toney, I thought, played really well as his time in Kansas City went on last season. They still have Valdez-Scantling, and Mahomes is a quarterback where, no matter who he's playing with, he's going to make them better. And the thing about Kansas City, too, without Tyreek is, like, they still were able to score plenty, but they did it, like, slowly. When they had Tyreek, it was always boom, right down the field and score. I feel like this past season, they really learned how to be a little bit more methodical on offense and really milk the clock and keep the ball out of their opponent's hands a little bit, especially when their defense isn't always their strength. So I feel like you got to mention, of course, the defending Super Bowl champions in this conversation as well.
I don't really think they strike me on paper. Like, I think the point that you made, Zach, when you started off your first lap about paper not playing, because that's my famous line, paper don't play. I think that was evident last year, right? And that's why this, conversation may not really be anything as far as the Chargers or the Atlanta or, the Ravens being explosive, because at the end of the day, these teams got to play. And I think if we had this debate last year, we wouldn't have picked Kansas City on paper, but they led the league in scoring because, paper don't play. And I think going into this year, once again, on paper, I'm not really astounded. Like, I don't really think they have a legit number 1. I think they're trying to buy into this Kadarius Toney experiment as him being the number 1. I don't think he's a number 1. I think he's better than what the Giants gave him credit for. And I think the Giants allowed a talented receiver to walk, but I don't think he's number 1. I would love to see them be or get a number 1 weapon for, Patrick Mahomes, for me to be like, all right, it's going to be on paper as explosive as it was last year. I still think the X's and O's with Andy Reid is going to make this offense more methodical and just more different than what it was before. But I think the most explosive part of this Chiefs dynasty was when Tyreek Hill was on the team.
Yeah, looking at their roster, another guy they picked up, ironically enough, also from the Giants, that I actually think could be a nice pickup is Richie James. He had some nice moments for the Giants last year, but honestly, man, it comes down to this: like, when you have Mahomes and you have Kelsey, like, you're going to be in the conversation, especially seeing what they did last year without Hill. Like, I just think we have to at least bring up the team that led the league at scoring last year.
So you think you like them? One more question before we move on, Zach. You like them on paper better than the other team they played in the Super Bowl, Philly?
I mean, Philly's another good one. My hesitation was with Philly, and ironically enough, this is also something you could use against Kansas City, was like the Eagles lost their offensive coordinator. I want to see how they do without Steichen. But yeah, man, I mean, they did lead the league in scoring last year. Like, I know it's on paper, but like Mahomes and Kelsey and, Pacheco, McKinnon is back. Like, I still think there are plenty of guys on paper that I do like. But Philly is, of course, right in that conversation with Swift as well. That's another good one.
All right. Zay, any last points, or are we moving on?
I just want to say there's going to be a lot of, like, on paper, a lot of teams just look like they're going to have some explosive seasons. I just can't wait for it to get put on the football field. I think we may have one of the better seasons offensively than we've seen in quite some time because of how much talent is out there. So I can't wait to break it down with y'all when that happens. And, man, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please look at this content. It is explosive, and I'm locked in. Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. We've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.